Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and Dota Underlords just put out a pretty small update, but it also comes with some pretty big news. That news is that this will be the last update before the big one update. Now this big update has been teased and kind of hinted at for a while now. We knew it would come in the first half of October, but based on this statement, it says that this will be the last update before the big update. Next week we won't get an update, but in exchange, if all goes well, we'll start showcasing each of the new features that you'll find in the big update as we approach release day. So that seems like it's probably going to be the week after next. So it'll actually kind of slip into the second half of October rather than in the first half. So that's kind of standard with development time these days. You set a date, it gets pushed back just a little bit. But this big update, we've had some ideas of floating around about what these new features are going to be. They've confirmed that there will be new units and new alliances. I don't believe they've confirmed that there will be new items, but I would be very surprised if there weren't some new items as well introduced to the game. There will also be the duos mode, which I'm really excited about, to be able to play duos with some friends. And also there will be the new Underlords system. The Underlords system is where you choose one of the namesake characters of the game, and that has some kind of effect on the way you play the game. We don't really know too much more than that. We don't know if it'll be a passive effect, an active effect, a once per game, maybe an every round thing. There's a lot of different ways they could take it, and I'm sure they're still figuring out all of the finer details on that. But I'm really excited to see that come out. But that'll probably be about 2 weeks away from now. We'll get a lot more information next week though. As for this patch, for right now, how this is going to affect your game, mainly there's just some bug fixes. They're updated that no longer when you pudge hook somebody, he could sometimes hook an untargetable unit, the Undying unit, from Helm of the Undying. No longer will you be forced to attack that. Fixed an issue where damage was incorrectly applied to Medusa as opposed to your other scaled units, really just a cosmetic issue. Fixed a tooltip issue with Enchantress so that now it shows the proper amount of healing. And they also fixed a very important bug on Lone Druid, where actually the Lone Druid Spirit Bear would not actually entangle an opponent. It's supposed to entangle every so many attacks or on certain percentage chance, but it just was not happening at all in this past patch. So that means Lone Druid was really, really bad, but now he's a little bit more playable again. They've also changed Viper so that his maximum mana is now 50. That means Viper is going to cast his ability very often. It previously was, I believe it was 100, but in any case, this definitely means that he's going to cast his ability quicker and more often, since he doesn't need nearly as much mana to cast it. So that should be a good buff to him, as he was pretty lackluster after his rework to get Nether Toxin rather than Viper Strike. They also changed some items. Big time contract. Players can now get more than one of this item again, and now before you freak out, they've reworked Bloodbound Alliance slightly. We'll get to that in a second. And Target Buddy can no longer be healed. So the Bloodbound. They've changed Bloodbound to when a Bloodbound unit dies, it gives plus 125% attack damage in addition to any existing Bloodbound bonus that it has to a random friendly Bloodbound unit. Now that might sound a little bit confusing. So what this really means is that previously if you had two Bloodbound units, one of them would die, and then the second one would get plus 125 attack damage. That functionality, exactly the same. But now if you have three Bloodbound, for instance, and one of them would die, previously both of the surviving two would get the same buff. Now only one of them, randomly selected, will get the buff, until that one dies, in which case that buff will then carry on over to the third surviving unit. So in the end, whenever you get down to just one Bloodbound unit left, you're exactly as powerful as you were before, if you only have exactly one Bloodbound left. But if you have, say, Bloodbound on Arc Warden or on multiple units, they're not all going to become supercharged. Basically, only one of them is going to get a buff as it bounces around, and if that unit gets killed, that buff will still grow and get better and stronger as it passes to another unit, but it'll just go to one unit at a time. So overall, this is a net nerf to Bloodbound Alliance, but in some cases, it's still identical. So when you have just two units, exactly identical. If you have three units and you say you have two units to sacrifice right up front, like say two Warlocks, and then you have somebody in the back line with a big time contract, it'll still work exactly the same. But it's definitely a nerf with Arc Warden, as you have two units and now they won't both get buffed. Only one of them will get buffed. So they've kind of compensated by that by saying you can now get more than one big time contract. It remains to be seen exactly how strong this will be, but it definitely is a net nerf from its current state. They've also buffed Savages quite a bit. Well, actually not quite a bit. they buffed it, and it was not very much. They changed it to you gain the +4 8/15 attack damage each time they land attack on an enemy or cast a damaging spell. So that affects Venomancer and Sand King. None of the other savages have a damaging spell. So I don't know. This is a super small buff, and savages are still really weak right now in the meta. The problem with them is that they gain attack damage, which then gets reduced by armor. And then this is just not nearly as much damage output as the bleed damage used to be, which was pure damage, not reduced by armor, not reduced by anything. And it just really leaves them in a very, very weak spot. And this change does not affect that really at all. I mean, your Venomancer and Sand King are going to get, I don't know, 4, 8, maybe 12 more attack damage than they would have otherwise. It's not substantial. Really not substantial. So I still think savages are going to be pretty low on the priority list. I still think Bloodbound maybe loses some of their late game options. They maybe are not quite as strong in the late game, but they should still be reasonably strong in the early game when you have just 2, maybe 3 Bloodbound. That'll still be the same plus 125% attack damage, and it'll function identically when you have 2 or 3 units. And other than that, Lone Druid's playable again, and Viper is going to move up a little bit in priority as he gets to cast a little bit quicker. So pretty small updates, and I don't expect too much shift in the meta because of this, just some small tweaks. But I'm really, really excited to find out more about this big update. I've kind of said what I know so far about it, which is not any more than is publicly available. But hopefully, starting next week, we'll start to see some of the concrete details of these changes, and we can see what direction Underlords is really going to take. I'm really excited for that. I hope you are too, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.